Okay. Welcome, everybody. Hope you guys are enjoying your Sunday, ladies and gents. We will be today discussing a very good topic, the source of our armor, right? So let me talk to you, at least where I get the source of my armor. Okay. And that is from God, right? What do I mean by this? First, we need to analyze what we call the Judgment Day dilemma, right? Today's topic is an intense one. We are talking about how God is love, the source of our armor. That is where we get our source from, right? For our everyday armor is God. Especially, we'll start by looking at Judgment Day and why this is a dilemma for most people. Now, I know that's a heavy topic, but give me a chance to explain, okay? To you how we're going to cover this, because a long time we've been handed a specific blueprint for how this works. We hear the words Judgment Day. We start immediately picturing a cosmic courtroom, right? We picture a giant scale. We've been taught to view it like a closed system, all right, where your good deeds on one side and your good deeds on the other. And if you follow the rules, right, if you say the exact right words, you get your ticket stamped. But I want you to really think about that for a second, right? Is the Alpha and the Omega, the architect of our entire universe, just an accountant tallying up our mistakes? Or is the reality of our inner temple something much deeper than that? I'm going to try to explain this through a story. This story begins with a man trying to buy a beautiful, priceless estate. Has a massive fortress with a beautiful plot of land. Right? It's a big mansion. He worked his whole life. He saves every penny. He plays by all the economic rules of this world. And he brings a massive briefcase filled with cash or gold coins to the architect who owns the fortress. The owner of the fortress states, "This fortress isn't for sale. You can't buy it. It was built as a gift for my family." It doesn't matter how hard that man worked. It doesn't matter that his money was clean. He was trying to use a transactional currency to buy his way into a house that was built purely on relationship. It was a gift. He was using the wrong currency system. So what does this story mean, right? It's trying to tell you that you cannot buy your way into heaven just by paying the price with your good behavior. You can't be a good guy and expect to purchase a room in the estate where the fortress lies. Because the system of the divine doesn't run on the currency of transaction. It doesn't ask for your money. It runs on the frequency of love. That's all it truly requires. But that leads us to the dilemma, right? The problem that a lot of people are afraid to talk about. What happens if we flip the script? I want you to imagine this story of another man. He doesn't know the religious vocabulary. He doesn't go to the right church on the correct days. He doesn't get on his knees and pray to the way society has expected him to. But every single day, he wakes up. He wakes up and he breaks his back to provide for his family. He protects his children. He stands as a wall between the innocent and the wolves of this world. He never acts out of greed. He never acts out of malice or ego. Every action he takes, every drop of sweat he gives, comes from a place of pure, unconditional love. He is actively guarding his inner temple against the shadows, even if he doesn't know the name of the light he's protecting. If God is love, literal, actual love, what happens to that man on Judgment Day? If we are going to understand what happens, right, heaven and hell, we must understand what they actually are. We have to look past the religious systems that men have built and look at the actual architecture of the soul. Let's take a look at what John has to say. In the book of 1 John chapter 4, the scripture tells us something very deep and profound. It states, God is love, and whoever abides in love abides in God, and God in him. Right? I'll say that one more time. 1 John chapter 4 states, God is love, and whoever abides in love abides in God, and God in him. It doesn't state, right? It doesn't say whoever knows the correct way to pray. It doesn't say whoever has perfect attendance in a specific building. It states whoever abides in love. So this man, the one that breaks his back for his family, the one refusing to comply with the selfishness and the greed of the world, he is acting as the immune system of the spirit. The world around us is infected with a system error, right? A virus of jealousy, of ego, of taking what is not yours. But this man says no. He draws a boundary around his home. He exercises controlled strength. He might not be verbally praying to the architect, but every time he sacrifices his own peace so his kids can keep theirs, every time he stands on his ground to ensure the shadow respects its boundary, he is building with the architect's blueprints. He has tapped into the spirit, which is God. He is a part of the divine frequency, whether he knows the label for it or not. And that's where we get the idea of hell so wrong. We treat hell like it's a little torture chamber that God throws you into if you don't sign the right religious paperwork. But remember what we talked about with the garden. Evil is just a vine that tries to suffocate the light. The shadow has no substance of its own. It's just a void. Hell is not a place where an angry dictator sends you to be punished. Hell is what happens when you spend your entire life building a void inside your own inner temple. It is a state of total, absolute separation. It is the ultimate tragic result of life lived purely out of ego, where you consume everyone else's light until you are completely, totally alone in the dark. It's like the bully in the park from the story that I told you that in our last stream. I told you this that he scares everyone away, right? He locks the gates. He screams, "I own the whole garden." But he looks around, right? There's nothing left. There's no fruit. There's no laughter. All he owns is a patch of dirt. That is hell. The crushing, heavy realization that you chose the void. So, how does Judgment Day come for the individual? If it's not an accountant checking a ledger, so what is it? Judgment Day is the moment the lights come on. It's the unveiling. It's the moment where all the noise, all the geopolitical systems, and religious boxes we have built are totally stripped away. When the good man, the one who loved so fiercely, provided endlessly, but didn't know the vocabulary, when he stands in that light, he doesn't meet a stranger. He looks at the Alpha and the Omega. He recognizes the same exact frequency of love that he spent his entire life protecting. The love he had for his kids, he suddenly realizes that was the divine working through him the entire time. Every true and honest act he did out of love, he was actually doing for the Creator. He was already in the loop. All right, now contrast that with someone who sits in church every Sunday, someone who knows all the prayers, who wears the right clothes, but in their daily life, they comply with the shadow, right? They fight their battles using hate. They let the malware of greed and the gossip run their actions behind closed doors. They speak the language of the garden. But in the middle of the night, they are planting weeds in their neighbor's soil. When the light turns on them on Judgment Day, it burns. Because the light exposes the void they have built inside themselves. They thought they had the right ticket, but they spent their entire whole life rejecting the actual frequency of heaven. True victory, true goodness, isn't about standing and just saying you believe in a specific system. It is active. It is the unhackable living code within you. It is a refusal to let the invasive darkness annex the territory of your soul. It is drawing a line in the sand at your own front door and saying, "This is my family. This is my community," and the fever stops here. Now, I know I just threw a lot at you, so allow me to explain this further. So let's reel it back in. Let's look at the blueprint and actually educate ourselves on what this all means. Because we use this world all the time, right? In this world, we use a specific word called the gospel. We say it, we preach it, but we have to understand what its functionality actually is. The gospel, the word gospel, literally translates to good news. That is the meaning of gospel. It means good news. But think about that closed system we were just talking about, right? All these different closed religious systems. If the good news is just to follow the exact 50 rules, sign this specific contract, and don't make a mistake, or you will burn in a void forever, that is not good news, my friends. That is a hostage negotiation. Over the centuries, human beings have built a massive institutional structures. We took the divine frequency and we put it in a box. We put walls around it and we turned it into a closed system, a VIP club where you have to know the secret password or pay the right dues to get inside. We acted like gatekeepers to the Alpha and the Omega. But the gospel, the true unfiltered gospel, is the complete destruction of that closed system. I want you to think about the physical temple in ancient Jerusalem. Inside that temple, there was a room called the Holies of Holies. It was the literal closed system. It was where the presence of God dwelled, and there was a massive thick veil, right? A curtain separating it from the rest of the world. Only the highest priest could go in, and only once a year. It was exclusive. It was hidden. But what happened when Christ was on the cross? What was the definitive moment of the gospel? The scriptures tell us the moment he died, the massive veil in the temple was torn completely in half, from the top to the bottom. The architect didn't just open the door, he destroyed the barrier. The closed system was violently ripped open. In the divine light, the pure frequency of love poured out into the entire world. It was no longer contained by the institutional structures of men. It was unleashed. That is the gospel. The gospel is the ultimate declaration that the grace of God has broken out of the building. All right, I'll put this in easier terms. I want you to imagine a massive dam holding back the infinite ocean of pure, clean water. For centuries, a group of powerful men stood at the bottom of the dam with a tiny little faucet, charging people a toll to get a cup of water. If you don't look like them or don't talk like them, they shut the faucet off. The gospel is the moment the dam breaks. The water floods the entire valley. You don't need to beg the man at the faucet anymore because you are completely surrounded by the ocean. Right? By that clean water, you'll be completely surrounded by it. So what does this mean for that good man? The one that breaks his back for his family. The light against the darkness. Even if he doesn't pray the way society tells him to. It means he's already swimming in that clean water. The gospel tells us that Christ's sacrifice wasn't just to stamp a few VIP tickets for the front row. It was a cosmic rescue mission to restore the entire hardware of humanity. The good news isn't that you don't have to earn your way into the state. The good news is your debt is already paid. The system error has already been defeated at the source. The architect has already declared that you are worth saving. Your only job, the only thing you have to do is not reject the water. All right. Now, I know what some of the naysayers are probably thinking right now. Probably saying something like, Eric, that sounds really nice. That sounds like a great comforting philosophy. But it's not biblical. You can't just bypass the system. You have to say the sinner's prayer. You have to follow the rules. But I want to show you something. I'm not the one bypassing the system. The institutional structures of men have bypassed the original blueprint centuries ago. And I'm taking us back to that original structure. If people want proof, undeniable evidence that this is how Judgment Day actually works, we don't have to guess. We just have to read the red letters, right? We have to read. We have to take a look at the exact words of Christ. I want you to turn to Matthew chapter 25. I'll give you a moment. Okay, Matthew chapter 25. Okay, in Matthew chapter 25, this is it. This is the ultimate Judgment Day scene. Christ is describing the end of the age, the great unveiling, where all the nations are gathered before the Alpha and the Omega. He separates them into two groups, the sheep on the right and the goats on his left. Now, pay very, very close attention to what that criteria is. He doesn't hand out a theology exam. He doesn't ask them what denomination they belong to. He doesn't ask if they had perfect attendance at a specific building. He looks at the people on his right and says, "Come, you who are blessed, inherit the kingdom. Because I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, you invited me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in a prison, and you came to save me." But here is the absolute most important part of that entire chapter. Here is the proof that shuts down the closed system idea. How do the righteous respond? Do they say, "Yes, Lord, we know, we did it exactly like our pastor told us, so we could get our tickets purchased?" Right? Get our tickets punched? No. They are completely confused. They look at him and say, "Lord, when did we see you hungry? When did we see you thirsty? Or a stranger? Or in a prison?" They didn't know it was him. They weren't doing those good deeds because they recognized the religious authority of God. They didn't have, right, the theological vocabulary. They were just operating out of pure, unconditional love for the vulnerable. They were exercising that controlled strength to protect the innocent. And what does the king say to them? "Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it for me." The proof is right there in the text. You can serve the Alpha and the Omega and can intimately be tied to the divine loop without ever actually knowing his name. As long as you are actively living the frequency of his love. Before the massive religious institutions built their walls, ancient civilizations understood this dilemma perfectly. I want you to think about ancient Egypt. Thousands of years before the biblical texts were even compiled, the Egyptians had a very specific, detailed understanding of Judgment Day. When a person died, they believed the soul entered the Hall of Truth, to face the ultimate test. And what was that test? It wasn't theology exam. It wasn't a review of what temple they attended. It was a literal scale. On one side of the scale, they placed the feather of Mahat. Mahat represented the cosmic order, truth, balance, and justice. It represented the divine's frequency. On the other scale, they placed the person's heart. I want you to imagine that scene for a second. The gods didn't weigh that man's wealth. They didn't weigh the title he held or how loud of prayers he yelled in the market. They bypassed all the external hardware and went straight for the inner temple. They weighed his heart. If the man had spent his life complying with the system's errors, if he was greedy, if he consumed the light of others, if he turned a blind eye to the vulnerable, his heart was heavy. Heavy with the void, heavy with malice, and the scales would drop, and his soul would be consumed by the darkness. But if he lived a life of controlled strength, if he protected the innocent, if he acted out of a place of love, his heart was light. It balanced perfectly with the feather of truth. And he was permitted to enter the eternal fields of peace. Okay? Let that sink in. Thousands of years ago, humanity already knew the currency of the afterlife. It is the condition of your heart, not the volume of your religious words. We can look further east at one of the oldest belief systems in the world, ancient Zoroastrianism in Persia. They had the concept of Judgment Day called the Shivant Bridge, the bridge of the requitter. When a soul left the body, it had to cross this bridge to reach the realm of the Creator. But the bridge wasn't a static structure. It reacted to the inner reality of the person that was walking on it. If you were a person who lived by their core tenet, which was simply good thoughts, good words, and good deeds, the bridge became incredibly wide. It became a beautiful Broadway path, easy to walk, surrounded by light, leading straight into the presence of the divine. But if you lived your life annexing the light of others, right, stealing their light, if you let the shadows colonize your soul, the bridge reacted to that void. It becomes as narrow as the edge of a razor blade. It becomes impossible to cross, and the soul would plummet into the abyss of its own making. Do you notice what's missing from that story? The bridge doesn't ask for a password. The bridge doesn't care if you are a priest or a peasant. The bridge only responds to the physical weight of your good deeds, of your good thoughts, of your good words, okay, of your physical actions. Now think about the good man we've been talking about this whole time. The one who breaks his back to provide, who loves his family fiercely, who refuses to lie or cheat even when his boss tells him to. When he steps onto the ancient bridge, it opens wide for him because his life was a continuous chain of good deeds. He was walking in the light the whole time. But the religious hypocrite, the one who wears the right vestments but abuses his workers and ignores the beggars, when he steps onto that bridge, his institutional VIP pass means absolutely nothing. The bridge shrinks to a razor thin edge because his inner temple is empty. The ancient world is screaming the same truth to all of us. The one that Christ taught Paul, right? Christ and Paul both taught this, that the Alpha and the Omega has never been trapped in a closed system. The divine architecture has always been available to any human being willing to step out of the fever of their own ego, to step into the frequency of love. You are the architect of your own eternity. You are the builder of it. You are building it right now with every single action that you take. Heaven and hell are not zip codes you travel to after you die. They are the ultimate eternal continuation of the trajectory that you are on right now. Every single day, you are making a choice. Are you complying with the evil of the world? Are you letting the shadow take over your peace? Are you exercising controlled strength? Are you clearing the first 10 feet of your own sidewalk? Are you actively loving the people right in front of you? Do not be afraid of the cosmic accountant. Do not fear the religious boxes that men have built. Fear the void and fight that void by being living, breathing immune system of the spirit, the way God intended. Stand firm, keep your inner temple clean, love without condition, and protect the vulnerable, and refuse to comply with the shadows. If you do that, you don't have to worry about Judgment Day, because the lights finally come on. You will already be standing in that light. I want to thank you all for joining me today. I hope I gave you something to truly think about. I hope it helped you shift your perspective. All right, put on the full armor of God. Protect your families. Be the men and women that God intended you to be. I'd like to close out in a prayer now. Dear Lord, I hope this message today was able to help anyone looking for clarity and give them the strength they need to keep the shadows at bay, for accepting your light as I have. They will be able to keep evil doings and the ego at bay. Amen. God bless you all. Thank you.